Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jane Hewitt and I'm the Capability Building Coordinator at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. For those of you who haven't attended a webinar session with us before, Connecting Up and TechSoup facilitate an annual training calendar of online webinars, workshops, boot camps and webcons to help the social sector upskill in all things digital. And you can check out our training and events program on both the websites. So welcome today to the webinar, Understand Customer Behaviour Using Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager with Rodney Ferro from PN Digital. Hello, Rodney.
Hi, Jane.
Before we begin, we'll just start with a bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, just type them into the questions box on your GoToWebinar panel and I'll be able to assist you. If you've got any questions during the session, you can type those into the questions box as well, and I'll pass them on to Rodney during the session and also during the Q&A at the end of the workshop. Please note that your comments and questions will not appear to the rest of the group. If you're on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and the video of the webinar. So if possible, please close all other programs to help you have the best experience. Also, please note that this webinar is being recorded and I'll be sending out the recording and the slides at the end of today. Before we start, I'd also like to ask you to fill in the survey, which will be popping up at the end of the webinar. That's all from me. I will pass over to Rodney to get things started.
Thanks, Jane, and welcome everyone. Nice to have you here, wherever you may be. Tuning in from Victoria, so lockdown Victoria. It's actually been a nice morning today, so hoping that energy flows through the webinar. So today's all about Google Analytics and understanding your users' behavior. What I'm going to do today is also just start with asking you, doing a bit of a poll. So I understand there's a few of you still joining, but if we can have a poll to know, do you currently use Google Analytics? What these polls are going to help me do today is craft the presentation to help attendees on the webinar or on the call. I do have a lot of slides here, but I will just manipulate them based on who we've got on the call. All right, so we've had a few responses. So we've got about 70% of people that use Google Analytics, which is great, or have Google Analytics, and 31 that don't. So I will focus more on talking a lot about how to better use Google Analytics today, but we will just tap a little bit on the basics as well. So today's presentation is about two main tools. One is called Google Analytics, as you are aware of, which is the tracking of data mainly on your website. There are other places like your apps and things that you can track, but today we're focusing on how to track on your website. And what Google Tag Manager is it's basically what it kind of is. It's a manager of tags, and one of the tags is Google Analytics. What this allows you to do is, rather than going to your web developer every time you want to install a new tag, so that might be something like Facebook tags, Google tags, Google Ad Grant tags, every time it's costing you money or taking time, if you already have the Google Tag Manager installed once, you literally go to an interface and it's a very easy to use interface where you can start installing your own tags and do it quite quickly as well. So today I'm just going to cover the basics of marketing. I like to do this in all of my presentations just to get sort of a bit of a benchmark and a framework of how we sort of house the presentation and where we're coming from, especially with Google Analytics and the different channels we'll be talking about. We'll explore the Google Analytics tools, and then I'd like to have the opportunity, please, to ask as many questions or share your successes and your stories. Now, we are finding that due to COVID, a lot of us are not being able to meet with other organizations like we usually do at networking events. So please do share your successes and anything that you can, any advice that you can also share with others where you might have had some wins. So who am I? I guess the whole workshop thing with people and playing golf is so last year. My name is Rodney Ferro. I run PN Digital. These were some of my passions, still are. But I mean, the reality is now that, you know, we're filled with Zoom calls. I think I'm probably doing about 5 to 7 a day, which we really need to cut down. I think normal, I'm sure you would agree, normal phone calls that you'd usually have with people are now turning into Zoom meetings when they're probably not required, right? Putting up a bunk bed for the kids because, you know, you're just in the next room. And also doing homeschooling, that's really taken off. We've got a budding photographer here that's wanting to do whatever daddy's doing. Also, that's kind of my setup in the bedroom of what you're seeing today. You can see the background here, but that's the front of it, the setup of how the webcam and everything's set up. And there's the old trusty masks that we've had to adapt to. So look, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I don't like talking too much about myself and everything like that. So if you want to follow any of my content, please find me on LinkedIn and connect with me on LinkedIn. I do most of my posts and communications there. Also later on at the end of the webinar, I will provide you a URL or link if you do want to have a one-on-one consult. There's no charge. As part of our relationship with Connecting Up, I offer a lot of my time pro bono. We are the preferred partner for the Google Ad Grant Management account, where you get up to $10,000 as a charity, not for profit, per month to spend on Google Ads. We kind of help manage those accounts. So I'm happy to provide some of my time for a one-on-one consult if that helps with your digital marketing. A little bit about PN Digital though. We're a group of freelancers and contractors that specialize in particular fields like LinkedIn, Google Ad Grants. Mine is Google Analytics and LinkedIn. And we come together, we're all based in Australia. We come together to support Australian, New Zealand organizations. We do have Sky, who's in Auckland as well, with all things digital marketing. So we partner with you instead of you hiring, say, a full-time resource. We kind of look at what services we can offer, just, you know, bit by bit, like a 1 day a week or half day a week kind of scenario. But that's it. There's no more sales slides or any talking about ourselves. Let's just get straight into, well, there's one more slide. I lied of some of the clients we work with, and we won an award a while back when we could go out and get awards. But again, as I mentioned, to better structure today's presentation, I'd like to know a little bit about what you would like to get out of this session. What would you like to learn? Would you like to learn more about improving conversions, understanding the very basics of Google Analytics, start to do like some more automated reporting maybe for your board reports or your monthly reporting, or being a bit more intermediate to advanced, learning about campaign reporting and how to track goals? Give you about 30 seconds to answer this. And I will try and challenge myself to adjust it on the fly. So it's the first time I'm trying this, so we'll see how we go. But I do understand that we've only got an hour, and I'd like to get through your questions as well. So please keep them coming in. All right, let's look at the results. So we've got improving conversions. We've got understanding the basics of Google Analytics, probably leading the way, and reporting. Okay, this is actually really helpful. So thanks for that. I probably won't go into campaign reporting and tracking goals because it is quite intermediate to an advanced level. So I'll probably focus on the first three. So if I do skip some of my slides, that's why I'm doing it. So let's just go into the basics of marketing. So the basics of marketing, when you talk to a lot of marketers, they give you the advice of, you know, knowing your primary audience. Who are you talking to? What are you going to say to them? We focus a lot on the secondary audiences. So if you take a sort of an organization providing disability services, you've got, you know, your primary audience or person that needs the caring or the service. That's fine. But then you've got a number of secondary audiences, right? So you've got the carers, you might have family, friends, probably nurses, doctors, those kind of things. So we don't want to call them influencers because that term's been sort of used differently in marketing, but they are people that influence a decision. Okay, so they do help with the decision-making process. So it's really important to know who those secondary audiences are. Also, what channels that those audiences live on, right? So whether it's online, a little bit offline as well. I know some other states that are open, you're back mingling and things like that. lucky you. But even if it's online, what channels, are they more on LinkedIn? So if you're looking for corporate sponsorship, for example, is that more on LinkedIn because you're networking with more businesses and you can actually have the one-on-one conversation, whereas Facebook might be more about community building. So you need to understand that. And then finally, producing the right message at the right time. We hear a lot about those kind of, what's the message? We also like you to focus on the sequence of the message. So I'll go through sequencing now, but sequencing is basically, not serving up. An example of an email marketing, which I see this in a lot of audits that we do, is we'll see that people send an EDM or an email marketing piece, which also is called an email newsletter, that's really, really long, right? And it goes on for a lot of scrolling. Most people aren't going to read all of that. So it's better to, make it a bit more concise, have a read more button. And if they're interested in a headline or an image that's grabbed their attention, they're going to read more. What that also does is it helps teach you what people, information and stories people are resonating with. So if you give the information to the person at the right time in the right sequence, that helps both parties as well. So the customer buying cycle. So now with every single piece of content, so again, looking at your website, right? With every single piece of content, there's the awareness and attraction point. So an awareness is when they don't really know about your organization or the services you deliver. They might know one service maybe, and that starts to become a bit of an attraction, but they're not really familiar of who you are. After attraction, we have appetite. So once you've created that, they're aware of you, they're attracted to your brand, you're now then trying to give them an appetite to work with the organization. This might come in a form of testimonials, case studies, some nice storytelling that you have, and that helps, build that trust in your brand. Then you have alternatives. So alternatives are something we don't like, okay? This is what happens in a sales process, I guess, when, especially with the MBIS, organizations have to really compete. You've done all the hard work about getting someone through your front door. They then go away and then go and get, 2 or 3 quotes. Now, instead of you letting them do that, how about you provide, learn from your customers, and that's what we're doing today, learning and understanding the behavior of what information they're resonating in with and what are they looking for. So if it's price-based, why not provide a couple of alternatives by removing some of the, additional services you might have in an offering. If it's to do with value creation, let them maybe build their product or let them see more testimonial videos, whatever it might be, really provide them with alternatives so they're trying not to leave what we called your ecosystem. They've got you front of mind and we want to keep them there. Then call to action, right? This is very important. I think sometimes as humans, we're afraid to ask. So even now, I think I can see one question here, and I'm just being upfront with you. I'd like more questions to come through, even if something you've had on your mind and you want to know. We forget to ask because, we're not sure, we don't want to be the first one and those kind of things. But even with running online fundraising events, you need to guide people on what you want them to do. You need to make the ask. You need to say, hey, we're going to run an online fundraising event. We've got a goal of $20,000 or whatever it may be. We're going to have these speakers and we would love you to contribute in this way and actually give them, so when we talk about action, it's not just call to action to say donate here. You actually have to give almost like, the runway guidelines and the step-by-step as to what you want them to do. And it's very important within a website as well to understand what those steps are. And then finally is advocacy. So we love when people are raving fans of our organization and they just help bring others into our ecosystem so we don't have to, do a lot more marketing. So this is just a little worksheet that I will, if you're interested in completing this sort of workshop, it does take between half an hour to an hour when I conduct this. So there is my contact details at the end if you're interested in doing this sort of workshop. It basically is going through that awareness and attraction and how we get people to go from column A to column B to column C and becoming advocates. So column C is where they become customers, some sort of transaction. Column D is where they become advocates, and then how do they breed more of those people that you want to work with. What that workshop also does is help you reduce costs. So because this is a not-for-profit webinar as well, some of the discussions we're having is reducing risk for cybersecurity, but also reducing costs. And I wanted to put this one in there as well as part of the workshop. So when you're looking at your Google Analytics, which we'll go through, you see all of these different channels that you're working on. Digital marketing, we're doing this, we're on Twitter and this, and TikTok or whatever. You need to probably look at your analytics and look at your stats and look at this activity, if you can do this worksheet, and see where you're spending the most amount of time and where there's a bit of a double up. Here we can just see if there's a double up or not. So Google SEO and LinkedIn, say the groups A and B are doubling up, right? So we might choose, okay, which one's having the most impact? We can go into our Google Analytics reporting, which I'll show you. It's called the acquisition report. And we can go through and see, okay, which one's doing better? Now, if Google SEO is doing better than LinkedIn, maybe let's remove LinkedIn if we don't have the resources. We're talking about women, man hours, or we're talking about, funds, okay? It's not just money all the time. Sometimes we just don't have the physical time to get there. And if you don't have that consistency and that time, better than putting a half-baked sort of, foot forward, I guess, you'd rather you go all in or you remove it. It's a good way. People forget to have, they've got the power to remove things from their tasks list, right? You don't have to commit to everything. Okay, so what is Google Analytics? So now let's start with why we use Google Analytics, okay? So I want to learn more about my customers and how they browse a website. So if a customer came or a user came to my website, they're not a customer yet. They might, if you look at the right-hand side, they might start on the home page, they might read an article, go to a service page, and hopefully they contact us. That's the path we would like them to follow. So that's kind of a type of goal. So in Google Analytics, we set up what's called goals. And if you have a goal, you can then work backwards to work out, what do I need to do to achieve that goal? So in this case, this is a very straightforward one. The one that I would like to focus on is the next one. You've probably heard about landing pages. Just to briefly explain what a landing page is, it basically is a page where people land on that serves a lot of content, where you're hoping that they can then convert into an inquiry or into some sort of exchange. So it might be an email subscriber or sort of some sort of data exchange or content exchange. A landing page can be part of your website. In this case, it is part of ours, or it could be sitting separately on a separate domain name. Don't confuse it too much. It is simply a web page, okay? So in this case, our goal is to get to the thank you page, because if we work backwards, we know that if they complete the thank you page, it means they've completed the form, which is our inquiry form. And if you go back again, they've landed on the landing page. So this is one of our most popular one with the Google Ad Grant, as I mentioned, and we know how that works. Now, if for any instance, one of those funnels, it's called in Google Analytics, one of those steps in the funnel are not working, we can then go back to that page and see what's wrong, okay? So now I'm gonna open up, and I'm gonna try and do this. I'm gonna open up Google Analytics and do a live demo for you, and let's hope it all works. But something we're gonna just think of is our main goals. So even if you just wanted to write it down, like a very easy goal, like, filling out a contact form or filling out a donations thank you page, just write down a goal as a bit of an activity, so you can have some thought process when you're asking questions as to what things mean and what it means to you. So if you have a look, if we also have a look at reports, so we'll go through some reports, we'll go through understanding our audience, some basic acquisition behavior conversions. All this will make sense when I go into the demo. So I'll just stop there. Let me try and bring that up for you. Okay, so this is a Google Analytics demo account. So don't worry, I don't have 240 users on my page right now. That would be an amazing number if that was the right traffic. Google Analytics provides us with a demo account that we can use. So I'm going to assume that we've got Google Analytics working at this stage. I will go into how we install it into Tag Manager, but let's just assume that we've got it working at this page, because we've got 70% of the audience that use Google Analytics. I'm going to go through some of the basic reporting. So under every single main parent category, like real-time audience acquisition behavior conversions, you have an overview report. Now, just to give you some preempt information, there's over 72 reports in Google Analytics, okay? And there's all variations further from that that you can customize and segment. So don't get bogged into the number of reports and wanting to learn everything about Google Analytics. If you start with the goals in mind and what you want to achieve, you can very easily then work backwards and see what reports best resonate with you and then just focus on them. Most of our clients just look at the overview reports, okay? And I'm just going to go through that. So in this overview report, this is a real-time report. When would you use this? You would use this if you were running a campaign. So if you were running an online fundraising event, or you would have just sent out an EDM to your database, a good idea would be to open up your Google Analytics and look at the overview report. You can see how many users are online now in real time, where they're coming from on the map. So usually, you know, when you're in Australia, this is an overseas account, so it'll show you in Australia what states are kind of clicking, and that's that little thing that you can see down here. You can also see which pages they're visiting, okay? Now, another thing that I use this for is when there's what's called a 404 error. That is a page cannot be found error. That's not a good thing. So if you're running any big campaigns, you may want to have your web developer on standby or something, or someone that can help manage the website, because if you see one of those errors, you want to attend to it as soon as possible so that the next person that goes there doesn't get that error. A tip for them is to create what's called a redirect. I'll show you about how to create redirects later, but that's a quick way to get around a page error that you might see. So again, there's a lot of other reports here. We're going to just ignore them. Now we go into audience. So this is the one that this is probably one of the most popular reports in Google Analytics, and it's called the audience report. You can start by doing a date selection on the top left. So we might just choose the last month, and you can hit apply. And then you can see your data and your users traffic and you know how much traffic you're getting to your website, which is really good to see. When you're reporting, you probably are going to use what's called compare to, and you would compare to a previous period. Now, on what I call a normal year, we always compare year on year. And why we do that is because we want to make sure that if we're comparing school holidays, we're comparing it to a similar time around school holidays. This year's obviously been quite different. So our comparing is becoming more month by month, which again, you have to, you know, work out how do you relate that information. So you do maybe do a bit of both, right? Year on year and month by month. But if you hit apply here, you can actually see that it shows you whether you've been doing a better job or a worse job. Now remember, this is just a demo account, but you can see that the users or the number of users has dropped by 14.5%. So that's not good. So we might want to investigate that and see why has that dropped and how we can improve that. Now let's just go back one step and let me explain a little bit about these terminology here. Now, do you have any questions?
We have one from Teresa saying,
yep.
My link goes to Google Search Console. How do I get to Google Analytics?
Okay, sure. So type in analytics.google.com up here. So Google obviously gives you the one login and then confuses you with a number of tools. So the best place to start is to actually start with the URL of what you're trying to use. So in this case, it'll be analytics.google.com, and then it should show up a sign up page or a login, and then you use your normal Google login to log in that way. All right, so just some terminology here. So users. Users means a person like myself visiting your website. Now, if I use it, and it's on a specific device, so if I use a desktop, like a laptop, that's one user. If I use my mobile, it's not going to know that I'm the same user because it's a different device, so that's going to be considered as two users. But just to keep things simple, a user is one person visiting your website. A new user would be someone that's unique and new in that period of time that hasn't visited your website before. A session is when that same one user might revisit your website. So in this case, you can see that there's an average of 1.37 sessions per user. That's how many times someone's repeat visited that website. Page views is a really good one to see how many pages people have viewed with your website. And you look at another stat called pages per session. Now, when we're looking at optimizing a website, so again, if we're talking about, let's use a volunteer drive. So we did one recently where we had a lot of blog articles from existing volunteers tell their story about, how it was to volunteer at the organization. That then led to, are you interested? Expression of interest or download, and there was one to download a PDF as well. But didn't lead it to an expression of interest form. Now, what we want to see is the pages per session. We want to see that people that went through and are browsing the site that are hitting the 3 to 5 pages per session on a normal organization's website. When I'm talking about a normal organization, I'm talking most organizations have information-rich websites. Very few are e-commerce transactional ones. In the e-commerce transactional side of things, you've got to see that you have a lot more pages being visited, right? Because you've got add to cart, checkout, and payment, and all that sort of stuff. But for the informational side, we definitely want to see roughly around 3 to 5. And then the average session duration, which means, okay, how long has someone spent on my website? So without getting bogged down into the terminologies, what we're really looking for here is that someone just invests more time in your brand, in your organization. So if they were walking through, your front door or meeting you at an expo or something like that, you're talking to them. They call you, you're talking to them. So the longer that conversation, usually the better the conversation, the more they're getting to know your brand better, and the more loyal they're going to be in working through their customer journey of more research turning into some sort of transaction. So that's what we're trying to do here. This bounce rate one, which is the last one, which I always get a question of what does bounce rate mean? It's a funny one. I wouldn't worry about it too much for this session, but basically it's when someone comes to your website and then looks at that one page and then bounces off and goes back to Google because they think I haven't found what I'm looking for. So that's why that stat was kind of put there, because you want to reduce your bounce rate. So around 50% is kind of an average. This website, is a demo site, so it's probably skewed for some reason, but 50% is a really good average because a bounce rate is not necessarily a bad thing. You could potentially get someone that comes to your contact us page, gets the phone number, calls you, and leaves your website. That's actually, they got what they wanted, you served them what they needed. So that's actually a good customer experience. So don't worry too much about the bounce rate, but we need to know that that's what it does. Now, as you can see, there's so many reports under audience and sub reports. We won't go through there. One that I'd like to probably just point out is device usage. I find this one quite interesting. So if you just have a look at the stat here that shows the device category as desktop, mobile, and tablet, and that's the order that it's saying that our users are most viewing. Now, if that's really small, let's see if I can just make it bigger for us. So if we have a look here, it's showing us that nearly 70% of people are accessing this website on desktop. And that's true because we're all remote working, or the majority of people are. But if we just looked at this time last year, it was actually the flip. We were over 70% on average on most of the accounts we look after, as mobile being the leading device that people were using. Why is this important? Because you need to understand how your users are behaving with your website, right? If they're browsing it from a mobile device, they don't need to see scrolling pages of content. They need to see more call to action buttons, clear and concise headings, and the next step of what you want them to take and make it an easier process. And you need to know what information most of those mobile users want to get versus what desktop people want to get. When you usually browse on a desktop, and most of us would probably agree, tell me if you don't, most of us would be looking at how many, doing more research. We'll have multiple tabs open on our desktop. We'll be doing research. We'll be comparing things. We might copy and paste things, getting a lot of ideas. Where on your mobile, you're mainly trying to get an answer to something really quick. You don't really have much time. unless you're commuting on a long train ride, but then you're probably listening to podcasts or something. So just be mindful of your, what your user and what situation they might be. And this is the kind of thing that the report really helps you with. So I really like to look at this one. Again, if we look at this in 12 months time, or some of the states that I guess that are not in lockdown, this stat might start to change. So let me just zoom out a little bit. Any questions? We've got a question here. How many pages per session should we be looking for e-commerce? So an e-commerce transaction section already has, I think, 3 or 4 steps. Now, what platforms like Shopify have done to make things easier is they do what's called like a one-page transaction. So you fill out your details, you do your payment, and you do your kind of confirmation on the next page. It's all kind of done within one page. And they do that so you're not kind of clicking through and refreshing pages. So depending on what kind of site you have, by default, and I'll just go to something in Google Analytics. I know we're jumping a step. But in Google Analytics, there's a shopper behavior analysis report. And this kind of shows people the different steps they take before a transaction. And this is kind of another funnel that we would look at in an advanced situation to see where are people dropping off. So in your organization that has an e-commerce section, you're probably wanting to know, how come so many people added the product to their cart and didn't complete? Well, you can go and find things like, how many people abandoned with the cart, how many people, checked out. And you might say, oh, we need to put one of those abandoned cart emails that send out an email to people to say, hey, you forgot to check out. Or, maybe there were too many steps. Maybe it left to go to PayPal, and that's the hurdle that you put into play. So you might want to change that to have a payment gateway that's within your website. So just a quick answer to that question, you probably got maybe 3 to 4 steps in an e-commerce transaction. And depending on where the client or the user started their journey, you probably have 1 or 2 pages there. So you're probably looking at, and this is an e-commerce site that we've got, which is at 5.7 or 5-page average. That's predominantly a good average if the session time is also low. But if you've got a lot of abandoned carts and people not completing the goal, then you need to look at, maybe for your audience, those pages are too many, or there's something in there that's causing that there's too many steps or too many hurdles. So hopefully I've answered that question. So going back into behavior as being the next one. So again, just focus on the overview report if you're just starting, and have a look at the different behaviors that people are doing. In this one, what we're looking for is what pages are people interested in looking at a website. This is very important to know what kind of content we should be writing, what we should be talking about, and where we could potentially, do some of those little salesy things that we need to do, or get them over the line to move them across our customer journey map to something that gives us a transaction. Because ultimately, we've got a goal that we need to achieve. If it's an inquiry, frequently asked questions, whatever download a PDF, whatever the goal may be, we need to help move them across. So this is a really good tool to see what are your most popular pages where you need to focus your energies on, and where you've got your most traffic coming through. There are other things that you can look at through here, but for this instance, I'll just skip it. And then conversions, we talked about. This is where you would probably set up your goals. So that basic example that we talked about in the PowerPoint, which was about just a landing page form to thank you, that might be a goal. And what you're wanting to do here is start to put some KPIs in your reporting. So when you when you finish setting up your Google Analytics, or you've worked at your goals, or you've worked with a consultant to set it up for you, you don't really have time to look at all the different things. You just want to know how many goal completions have we had. So we gave you, we wanted 100 PDFs downloaded per month. We wanted 20 corporate sponsorship form inquiries filled out per quarter, whatever it might be. You might have some KPIs that you need to achieve, and having goals set up here really helps when you want to do automated or faster reporting. Okay, so I will just move through on to the next section, and we will come back to this demo. All right. So we've just gone through a little bit of that, and hopefully that was good. Please put in the questions box if you didn't mind doing a live demo, or you just wanted to see it on slides, it's good to get a bit of feedback. I'm so used to Zoom calls where I just tell people to unmute and just talk. Now, the next thing is also understanding why you want Google Analytics, what do you need it for? But I really do want to show you how to quickly get access to your favorite reports. Then also how you can email your regular reports. And then finally, just looking at the dashboards. Now, this bit might become a bit more intermediate, but if you can actually know of this, that it exists, it might make your life easier when you want to do those monthly reportings. And again, as we mentioned, goals, we're going to probably skip that because it wasn't something that everyone wanted to know on this call. Let's just jump back into reporting. So the first one I wanted to show you was quick access and email. Okay, so now if you go into your reporting, if there are any reports that you like, you can hit save, okay? And you can give it a name. And so what that will do is it will save it into your section up the top here, okay? Under saved reports, under customization, saved reports. So that way, instead of you saying, oh, where did Rodney tell me to get that mobile desktop report? Well, you could have just gone into here the first time, or you could have got someone to help you with that, and you could have just clicked save. Okay, now this may not work. Actually, it should work because I'm logged in. So, so if I go into my saved reports, I can actually see that the mobile one that I just saved is there. Okay, and that's a quick way of you getting access to your reports or your favorite reports. So you don't have to go finding it through the 72 different reports. Now, another thing I wanted to show you is that once you do have your report, if you wanted to, you might not be used to logging into Google Analytics. So if you wanted to kind of get it emailed to you regularly, you can actually export it as a PDF, and it can do that. Or, so I probably try and stop that process. Or you can click on share and you could email it to yourself, and you could choose the frequency, say once a month. And then you can get that report emailed straight into your inbox as a PDF, and you don't need to remember. So that's just something very quickly. And the customized dashboards, again, I guess because you guys mentioned that reporting was important. So this might sound a bit intermediate, so just bear with me, please. So Google Data Studio, another Google product, helps with reporting dashboards. So if you wanted to pull in Facebook data, Instagram data, or other Google Ad Grant data, not just your website Google Analytics data, you can do that with this product that they've called Google Data Studio. But what a dashboard does is basically gives you a customized view of a report that you're creating yourself that you can just easily then change a date. So in this one, they've got some pre-made ones. So if there was a device report we wanted to use, which you may not use, you might want probably like an e-commerce dashboard, probably would be the one that you want to see on a regular basis, or a form inquiry one on goal completions. But just say it was this one, you could quite easily just simply change the date, right? Hit apply. And because it's already nicely done with the tools and the widgets that you want, you could just then do a screenshot of this and just paste it into your report. So that's some time-saving ways of creating, using the dashboard functionality to help save your report. Okay, let's move on. So I'm not going to go through this Google Analytics setup because, as we mentioned, that people wanted to know the basics. But I'm not going to show a demo, sorry. But basically, you go to create your analytics account at this address, or this is also where you would log in, as per the question previously. You would then get some tracking code, which you install on your website. Now, you can go and give this to your web developer, and they can do it for you. It should be a 15-minute task. So if they're charging you, lots of time or whatever, you should probably find out, what else are they doing for you. Hopefully, what they are doing, what we do, because we charge between 1 to 2 hours at least, is we do the basic account checks. So we make sure that the right users are getting access to it. The configuration is set up, which are basic things like if you have got a Google Ad Grant account, we link it to Google Analytics so the data gets fed through. We also make sure that there are different what's called views in Google Analytics. what a view is basically, you know, a view is just a copy of the same data. So Google Analytics doesn't have like a bank storage of all of your data that you can just access at any time. It only starts to work when you install Google Analytics. But when we install Google Analytics, we get all of the data. So we get all of your spam data, like, or data from countries where you're getting, you know, bombarded, might be like, say, China or India or something like that, where you don't want to receive the content. Well, having multiple views, what you can do is you can create another view called a primary view, and you can leave that raw data there. And in the primary view, you can filter out some of this spam data, or even if it was from your organization. You know, if all of the staff in your organization are accessing your website, you really don't want to have that data in here because it's probably skewing up your information when you really want to understand user data. So a good thing to talk to either your developer or look at yourself is the different types of views that you can have to filter out some of that data. This is what the tracking code looks like when you sign up. So just, you know, just copy it and paste and put that in. Now, Google Tag Manager. So I might try and come back to this if we've got time, but again, in Google Tag Manager, you create an account similar to how you create Google Analytics, and you get a bit of code that looks similar to the Google Analytics code. But as I reminded you before, Google Analytics is one type of tag. So every time you get more tags, you've got to keep on coming back to that web developer, keep on paying them to install new tags. Whereas if you install Google Tag Manager once, it makes the system quite easier. Also, don't forget to test your tag manager to make sure it's working. I'm sure Jane's going to share these slides with you. I'll put a link there on how you can actually get access to Tag Assistant, which helps you, you know that your tags are working for you. Again, please make sure this gets very technical, so use a developer or a professional for this part if you're not certain. There are plugins for you know, websites that use WordPress, for example, called Header and Footers or Header Footer Code Manager. They're the two that we use that make it, again, easy to just copy and paste it into this plugin. Like literally, it's like copying it and pasting into Word to make your Google Analytics work. Again, not sure, ask your web developer, then test to make sure it's working. A really easy way to test it is open up your browser, go to the real-time reports that I showed you previously, and see if you're coming up from your location. And if you're not sure if there's too many people on your site, just browse to a particular page and you'll be able to see if you're there or not. All right, I really want to get to this bit. So another poll, and let's see who's awake and listening. Do you use visual tracking software? Do you know what it is? We use one called Hotjar. Jane, are there any questions?
Yeah, we've got one question. Oh no, a couple now. How do you easily see what a desktop user is looking at compared to a mobile user?
Okay, sure. I'll come to that at the end. Yep.
Just a few comments. Loving the live demo.
Okay.
How does GTM work with third-party sites to track traffic?
Yep. All right, we'll get to that as well. All right. So the first one was desktop versus mobile, and the second one was GTM. All right. So a lot of
sorry, what visual tracking software is, but I assume you're about to go.
Let's get into it. Well, what a segue, huh? That's what we love, you know, people helping in the whole webinar. So, okay, so a very few use visual tracking software. So it's good that there's probably one or two of you that are. Visual tracking software like Hotjar, and the reason we use Hotjar is that there is a free version of it, which can get you a few number of recordings. Google Analytics is what's called post data collection, which means when someone clicks on your website, then you know it records it, because it records it in Google Analytics, you know that they've clicked on your website. But if someone does not click on your website, so if someone's just browsing through your nav bar, going up and down and through different items without clicking anything and just scrolling up and down on your homepage, you won't actually know the frustration that they're having with your website, because you'll only know when they've clicked on your page, and you'll say, oh, we served up that page and the session time was huge, awesome, win for us. But in fact, you didn't realize that they were really frustrated for 30 seconds to a minute trying to find what they were looking for, and your site was just too complicated, right? So to help improve your user experience, we use visual tracking software called Hotjar. So what Hotjar does, it actually allows you to see someone browse your site. And I'll do a quick little demo to show you what that means. Then you can, and I usually do this while I don't have a cup of coffee with me, but I'm having coffee or lunch and watching some of these videos, because otherwise, you know, we don't have that much time in the day. But every time you see something, note it down. Another tool that it also has is what's called heat maps. So you can actually see the hotspots of where someone's clicking, which buttons are, or which parts of your navigation menu are most important. A lot of organizations find this part very, I guess, surprising when we see how much time is spent on the About Us section and board members, and how people are reading through the different other, you know, organization leadership team members and wanting to learn more about the organization. How much time is actually spent there is quite interesting to see. So as I mentioned, there's a free account, and again, and to that answer to that question, how do you install other tags? We'll show you how to install that using GTM. So here's just a quick little view on what a heat map. So this is a hotspot heat map. This is just showing where it's hotter above the fold, and then as the page scrolls down, it's getting cooler and cooler. So let's go look at our recording. Now this one, so you can change the speed here, and I hope this is coming through. So I'll just go faster so you can see that someone's clicking here. That's me actually clicking. I did this one for the demo. Just showing that I'm scrolling down. I've clicked a button. I've gone to the Google Ad Grant page. I'm reading. I've clicked the inquire, and then looking at the form. Okay, now that's just a very quick one. There was another session there, but because this is a live and I haven't previewed that session, I'm not going to look at it. Don't know what people are typing in. Now you'll see just in the background, the contact fields and everything is secure, so you can't see personal details in a visual recording. It's not allowed due to privacy, so we don't have to worry about that. But definitely what this allows you to do, if we did go a bit slower, is it allows you to see how someone's browsing through the site and what they're clicking and how they're scrolling through up and down. You know, it's very different from someone providing you feedback, because people don't provide you feedback. So that's just something to quickly look at. And again, if you've got more questions or you want a Hotjar sort of consult or something, I'm happy to spend the time going through it with you details. Now, this is a section we're going to skip because it's probably too advanced. I did talk about creating a redirection URL. If you've got WordPress, you know, look for a plugin called Redirection Tool, but again, probably go to your web developer to get some more information. But this is somewhere where, you know, you can create a nice shortened URL, so pn.com.au/grant, which then redirects to the longer address if I was trying to use it for marketing purposes or whatever it might be. So what do I do with all of this data? Okay. So again, remember our goal was to hit the thank you page. Okay. Now you've got multi-channel marketing. We've got Facebook, email, you know, paid ads, direct mail, or radio ads are starting to become popular, or Spotify ads, right? Then you've got the battle between desktop and mobile, which I'd like to get through on the reports, because you're wanting to know that they're also, you've got an internal fight now between them fighting for your content. You've got to work out which one do I serve first, or do we serve different content when they go to mobile versus desktop? And you can do that depending on your website too. And as I mentioned before, it's all about removing those roadblocks. So the more you can spend time in those funnel type reportings and understanding where customers are spending the most time, looking at recordings like Hotjar to visually see where they're going and what they're struggling with, try to remove some of those roadblocks, and you'll see it yourself. You know, sometimes we don't have a call to action button, but sometimes it's right at the top and then it never appears again. And so the next option is for someone to just close the window. This is another report you can find, what's called a behavioral report. So it's a behavioral flow report where you can see someone starting, which page did they start on and how do they continue through the process. So I use this, which is from Google Analytics, and then I use the visual tracking from Hotjar, because then I can just sit back and visually see it without having to go through too many reports, and actually make calculated decisions and on where I should probably fix up or remove some of my roadblocks. Like here, there's a massive drop off after people hitting this page. So I'd be looking into that, saying, okay, are we getting the right traffic to the site? Maybe it's not the right traffic for the right content, or is there something really going wrong there? There was one instance where we found that the donations payment gateway wasn't working for an organization, which was a really bad place to be. But by looking at their reports, and you can even set up alerts in reports, which again becomes advanced, but just know of that you can do that. If statistics drop really low, you can set an alert, which can say, hey, something's not working, go check it out. Because we're not living in Google Analytics, right? Even I only spend about half an hour to an hour in total a day for all of my clients. So I'm not living in Google Analytics. So it's best to have an email alert. So yeah, basically that brings kind of close to the end. So it's the landing page to form to the thank you page. That is our goal. That's what we want to achieve. Using these three tools like Google Tag Manager, Analytics, and Hotjar, we can definitely get there. So now, before I say thank you, I want to show the demo, basically, on how to do it on Google Tag Manager. All right, I've got Google Tag Manager opened here. And we will try and install the Hotjar code, for example, because that's a different one. So, okay, so similar to the other Google products, when you're logging into Tag Manager, go to tagmanager.google.com, log in with the same Google account that you have. You do not need to create separate Google accounts. Probably a good idea not to, because then you'll have a number of them. You will end up with a blank space like this where there's no tags or anything like that. And a quick explanation, a tag is a bit of code that needs to what they call fire on your website to give you statistics. So you create a tag, which might be a Google Analytics tag. It then fires when anyone browses your website. It then puts in information to your Google Analytics. That's kind of how it works. So let's create a new tag. So when you go to creating a new tag, you can give it a tag, title tag. So I will show you Hotjar, but I'll also show you that some already come pre-made. So there's already ones that are already here, So if we go down here, Hotjar's already there. So you click on Hotjar, and now it's just asking for the Hotjar site ID. So if I go into my account and there's install tracking, there we go. And if it had asked me for code, so if your web developer's asking you for code, that's the code here, and you'd hit copy to clipboard. But in our case with Tag Manager, we just need that site ID. So I've just hit copy on my keyboard, and I'm going to paste it here. And as I mentioned, the triggering or the firing is when do you want people to, when do you want a Hotjar to kind of enable itself to work for you? We want it to work on every single page. Then I just hit save up the top here. What it's doing now is simply saving that rule that I've created about Hotjar code being fired on a page. I haven't actually made it go live. I've just saved it in this profile. What you need to do next is you need to submit it. So you can write a note here. You can add more information, and once you've done that, it's saying here I'm going to publish to, and if you can see that, I'm going to publish to the live environment, and you click publish here. Once I've published that, that's now gone into my website basically, and telling my website that I've got a new tag that I want to track. So similarly, I can never say that word. When you want to go and create new tags, for, say for example, the Facebook pixel or anything like that, again, you click on workspace, you click on new tag, browse some of the tags that they have here. So Google Analytics is the most popular one. If we scroll down, they've got all these other ones like, we go down here. Actually, they might not have Facebook due to competition, because Google ads and Facebook ads, they compete. But you can add what's called a custom HTML tag, and then you can add it there. there are beautiful things that Google has, well, Google users like myself put up. It's a marketplace where you can actually get pre-made tags, pre-made dashboards, pre-made templates that can actually help you. But you can actually just paste the code into here and do it that way for the Facebook pixel as well. Just quickly, that other question about telling the difference between mobile and desktop traffic. So we'll go back to here. So what you can actually do, and I don't know how to actually show it in this demo account because I've got it set up, is you can overlay content based on desktop. I'm going to try and do it for you, okay? So we're going to say, I think the question was, you know, what content's being viewed on what pages. So I'm going into behavior, clicking on site content, and then clicking on all pages. There's a setting here, again, it's small. Sorry about trying to make it bigger. Hopefully you can see that. It says primary dimension here. There's also a thing called secondary dimension, which you can then say, what do you want to see? So I want to see, let's see, mobile device info. No, I'll just do mobile including tablet. So I want to see mobile traffic. Okay, so this is now going to refresh and show me mobile traffic. So I can now see how many page views and information I'm getting, and if it's been looked at by mobile or not in this case. This is not giving me the stat that I want. Sorry about that. It's in here, but it's such a different setup, this demo account. But you look up the information here and it'll actually give you, I'm struggling to find it here. I've actually got it set up on mine. But yeah, you can actually find different information here. Also, what I guess I missed out to show you this one, the acquisition overview one. Another good report to look at is this one here, where you can actually see where your traffic is coming from. So we talk about knowing, you know, how many people are coming from an organic Google search. That would be the first one. How many people are directly typing in the website address into the browser? That's another one. How many people are coming to your website from a referral site? This is a good one to see that, you know, which websites are giving you the most referrals, which partners, which affiliates and things like that. Also, you know, social media and so on and so on. But you can dig down to these reports, and I'm happy to create a video about this and make it available later on from my account on how to find the information, the content pages, which ones are people are looking at it from mobile versus desktop, because I think that's another good report for you to then create and have, because then you can see, okay, if there's a lot of people looking at your About Us page through a mobile phone and that scrolls forever, you probably need to then create a different page, and you can do that on most websites, that if someone's looking through a mobile device, it shows a shortened version. And if someone's looking at it through a desktop device, it shows the full-blown version. And you can do that basically based on programming something that does it by size. So I'm sorry if it didn't answer the question with a live demo, but it's kind of hard and tricky when I'm diving into other accounts. But look, I think we're 2 minutes to close. So thank you for your time. If you do have any questions, I'm happy to stay online for a couple more minutes. But as I mentioned, I'm happy to offer a free one-on-one consult. Don't worry, there's no sales spiels or anything like that. As I mentioned to you, we're already appreciative of being a partner with Google, being the Google partner with Connecting Up. And so we're happy to provide our time on these webinars. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. Please, you know, type in the chat box. It's always good to know things. But yeah, if there's any other questions, please type it too. Jane, do we have anything else?
Yeah, just one from Georgina saying, so it's better to set up all your tags in Google Tag Manager rather than keep updating your web developers.
Yeah, and also what it does is so Google Tag Manager gives you one library of all of your tags. So some people might have so much code or tags on their website, they forget that they're not using things anymore. Like Hotjar, you shouldn't have that on there forever. You should only have it there for that month or 2 months or even 2 weeks of tracking. Once you finish with tracking the data, remove it, because what every bit of code does is it slows down your website. You know, we don't want a slow website. It's a bad user experience for someone. It's also something that Google penalizes in the organic search. If you have a slow website, your ranking drops. It's just a known factor that it is one of the major factors of having a faster website. So definitely put it all into Google Tag Manager. You can easily unpublish them, switch them off, republish them. It's a really good way to manage it when you're doing your housekeeping and audits.
Cool. And one last question from Janine. Are there any industry benchmarks for charities, RE pages per session, and other aspects of a website that you would recommend should be tracked through analytics?
So benchmarking is an interesting one. There are tools from Google Analytics when you first sign up to the account that allows you, to tick a box to say, do you want to participate in getting benchmarking information? So you can tick and you choose your industry that you're in. It's kind of skewed. We haven't found that to work very well. It's skewed on a number of things. Sometimes they just don't have enough data in Australia, so you get benchmarked with overseas, especially for not-for-profits in an e-commerce, for example, industry. It might just be too niche. I would be looking at just benchmarking against yourself based on your goals. It's a very easy exercise to do. So how we approach websites is like, is the website working for me? What does that mean? Well, we want the website to convert while we're sleeping, or we want the website to help reduce our phone calls to our office because we're only a small team. We can't take so many phone calls. So we use that kind of strategic sort of business case and approach organizations because we're trying to help solve problems, and we use Google Analytics to help understand what the problem is and the website to solve problems. And if we can do that, then you're achieving your goals. If you're looking for benchmarking data, you know, there's organizations that do a great job, but they turn over 40 million or 100 million. They've got an internal digital marketing team. Does that really compare? We can't really compare because there's the turnover issue, there's the internal resources versus external resources issue, there's all the different channels. So there's a number of things. I think as a suggestion, create your own benchmarks, compare year on year, month on month, and start to try and, you know, put in KPIs that you can exceed. A 15% to 20% growth rate is what you should be looking at year on year.
Great. Okay, that's all the questions. Thank you so much, Rodney. That was really interesting. And thank you for joining us today. And like Rodney said, he's left his contact details on there on the last slide. And if everybody could please fill in the survey, that's great for our feedback. And also just keep a look on the Connecting Up and TechSoup websites. We've just added a few more events for later on in the year. So thank you once again. Thanks, Rodney.
Thank you, Jane, and thanks everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.